morning. My name is Awawate, and today I'll be talking about the gut microbiota and its role in obesity. Now, I shall be walking you through the introduction. We talk about the gut microbiota, the lactobacilli or bacillus, how it depends on manganese. We talk about obesity and then the classifications of obesity using the BMI. We shall be talking about dysbiosis and some biological effects. How do we reverse obesity? By healing the guts. We shall be concluding the work and then drawing our references. So, to start with, according to Lactobacilli and Mackerel, the microbiome is an ecological community of commensal, symbiotic, and pathogenic microbes that share our body space. It is pertinent to mention that when the ecological community of commensal, symbiotic, and pathogenic microbes share our gut environment, we can succinctly put it as what? Gut microbiome. So that's what it is. The ecological community of commensal, symbiotic, and pathogenic microbes that share our guts is referred to as the gut microbiome. Over 95% of our body supply of serotonin, which influences both mood and GI activity, is supplied by the gut microbiota. And then it has been studied, it has been investigated that serotonin deficiency is linked to obesity. Now we talk about the gut microbiota. Note that 80% of the immune system resides on the gut wall, and our beneficial flora modulate this main defense system. Yes, 80% of your immune system is contained in the guts. So you can see that the microorganisms, the community, ecological community of microorganisms that inhabit the gut constitute over 80% of the immune system, compared to what we were taught in school about the pluripotential stem cells, the lymphoid progenitors and the myeloid progenitors and all that. Again, the gut, the GI, is home to a diverse and dynamic microbial community whose metagenome dwarfs the human genome by a factor of 100. Yes, when you put side by side the human microbiome project and the human genome project, you will see that the human microbiome is greater by a factor of 100 compared to the human genome. That's what my slide is trying to say here. And then we can see that we have dominant bacteria phyla that are associated with the gut. We talk about the actinobacteria, the Firmicutes, and then the Bacteroides. These are the phyla that are commonly found in the gut. Remember that the stomach has a very high acidic content with a pH of about 1.5, and the bile has a pH of about 2. Despite this high acidic content, these microorganisms are still able to survive there. That makes them probiotic. That makes them lactic acid bacteria, because they are able to survive in an acidic, a highly acidic environment. Lactobacillus depends on manganese. Yes, manganese is a mineral that the abundance of it is used in scavenging oxygen species, particularly superoxide. The lactic acid bacteria contain very high intracellular manganese. Again, the intestinal absorption of iron, zinc, and calcium is facilitated by lactobacilli, especially when it is converted to phosphorus in the presence of phytates. Now we talk about aromatic amino acid. Our supply of aromatic amino acid is essentially from the shikimate pathways in the gut bacteria. Yes, human beings don't have the shikimate pathway, but the bacteria in the guts do have shikimate pathway, and they are the ones responsible for the production or manufacturing of the aromatic amino acid. We talk about the tryptophan, the tyrosine, and then the phenylalanine. These are the three aromatic amino acids. Tryptophan, for example, and inhibitions of tryptophan will lead to increase in appetite. When your tryptophan is not enough, you tend to crave for food so often, so badly, that you become obese overnight. So you see, and tryptophan is basically converted to serotonin in the presence of tryptophanase. Serotonin is converted to what? Melatonin in the presence of hydroxylindole or methyltransferase. Imagine you have a dysfunctional gut microbiota, or there is a dysfunction in your shikimate supply of aromatic amino acids. You will not be producing tryptophan. Serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone, will not be produced. And then talk about melatonin produced. It can be from where? The gut. Yes, melatonin can be produced from the gut, as you can see, and it can be produced from the pineal gland, and most importantly, from the subcellular cell. We talk about the from the subcellular cell. In fact, the melatonin produced from the gut, or rather from the pineal gland, is like a backup melatonin because it is highly expressed in the dark. But in the presence of sunlight, you have a lot of subcellular serotonin. Sunlight, incandescent light, candle light, camp light, you have a lot of subcellular serotonin. This must be confusing. In the dark, melatonin is expressed. Yes. So what about this? That in the presence of NIR, like the new infrared, you have a lot of melatonin again. It's confusing, but don't be confused. Yes, pineal gland produces what? Melatonin, and the productions of melatonin is high it's high when the environment is dark. Yes, but again we have subcellular melatonin produced from the mitochondria. It is actually expressed in the presence of light, the NIR, the new infrared, aka the sunlight. And not just the sunlight, the incandescent light, the camp light, the candles, yeah, they can facilitate the productions of melatonin. That you should know. Obesity, we say, is a metabolic disorder marked by low-grade chronic inflammatory states manifested by elevated level of circulating pro-inflammatory cytokines. When we say pro-inflammatory cytokines, we begin to talk about the interleukin-1, interleukin-2, interleukin-8. Sometimes you can have interleukin-6 and a whole lot of that too. So how do we classify obesity? Using the body mass index, which is calculated by your weight all over your height. The weight is expressed in kilogram, and then your weight, your height is expressed in meters squared. So when you have a disproportionate weight in tandem, in pari passu to your weight, your height, you are obese. And according to WHO, the obesity can be classified into class 3, when your BMI is greater than 40, class 2, when it is around 35 to 39.9, class 1, when it is around 30 to 34.9. Now, what are some biological effects of dysbiosis? Dysbiosis essentially is the imbalance in the gut microbiota that leads to what? An unhealthy state. When you take a lot of medications, when your diet is very high in bad fats and low in vegetables and carbohydrates, you tend to have the biosis tends to be dysfunctional. When you are under constant stress, you tend to disturb your gut microbiome. When you take a lot of glyphosate or glyphosate-ridden food, like the drinks, I know that Guinness Stout has a level of glyphosate, and then is it Heineken? Yes, Heineken too has a level of glyphosate, and so many other foods, some greens and vegetables are glyphosate leading. So when you take a lot of food containing glyphosate, it tends to deplete the aromatic amino acids, and it will lead to a deficiency of serotonin, which is linked to obesity. How do we now reverse obesity? By eating a lot of probiotics, prebiotics, polyphenols, tryptophans, and minimizing the use of antibiotics and non-antibiotic products. Yes, probiotics are live bacteria that reflorate, that actually repopulates your gut. It makes your gut healthy to be able to produce what? The aromatic amino acid, among other things. And here is our conclusion, that there is a link between dysbiosis and obesity, which can be alleviated by eating foods that promote the growth of good bacterial in the gut. My name is Walter once again. These are my references, and do subscribe to this channel. Just please